Welcome to Leaderseeds Podcast. My name is Jordan and I'll be your host here. Today's episode is special as we'll be talking to Alec Raebel. And Alec is an author of the book Seen with Blind Eyes, and he's currently working on his second book, which would be his first poetry book. Alec also is an intern at his local church in youth ministry. And just like many of us, Alec was born with sight, but one day he got the news that he would start losing that sight. So I'd like to invite you to listen into today's entire episode because he'll share how he overcame that news initially and how he continues to overcome, persevere, and fearlessly lead every day. Now let's go ahead and listen in to this powerful conversation. All right, so here we go. We're going to get this next episode started on Leaderseeds Podcast. I want to welcome you back if you're joining us again, and I also want to welcome you if it's the first time you're checking it out. I want you to be excited because we're talking to my friend, an awesome leader, and I'm sure you're going to get a chance to kind of agree as you're listening today. My friend Alec here, and let's go ahead and start talking. Alec, how's your day going, man?
You know, man, I'm on Leaderseeds Podcast. It's sunny outside. I got to have coffee. It's a good day, man.
It's a good day. It's a good day. Man, you're already dropping a hint of your mindset to the listener. So if you're listening to this, pick up on that really quickly. See how he kind of frames a good day, and you're going to see how he looks at life, my friend here, and it's all going to come together. Be excited for today's episode. Alec, man, I know we got started with today's episode, and we got a lot of things talking as we met a few times already. I know there's a lot of places we can start in your leadership journey, and every single one is super impactful. For you today specifically, which one would you want to kind of start on? What's on your mind today, man?
You know, that's a great question, Jordan, because I've been really thinking about perspective this morning. I woke up with like this new mindset of I want to make a shift, not only with myself, but with the people around me, the people I talk to. So my question to you is, what's something that's been shifting in your life? And then we'll kind of go from there.
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say the first thing that popped to my mind, I like to trust the initial response, mentally and just process it. And the first thing that comes to mind is, especially if you're in a season of growing, there's always a shift happening. So I think the initial shift is our mind, right? We're challenging our old beliefs in a sense to kind of see and validate it in a sense, right? We're trying to see, am I looking at this, whatever it is in life, appropriately for this season so I can win at this season, because we continue to grow in that sense. So I know that might be kind of loaded in that conversation and packed, but to answer your question, I think the shift that happens in our mind first always leads to the external shift.
I know exactly what to talk about then.
Sweet.
So what I want to talk about with you guys is kind of my story of loss. And from there, what I gained. And just so you know, in this episode specifically, I'm going to be speaking a lot about perspective. And I also want you to know right now, my entire life is one giant pun, and you'll understand why later. So, guys, like Jordan said, my name is Alec Raebel, and I am mostly blind. Now, I don't know what your face looks like right now. When you heard that, some of you might go, interesting, or some of you might go, what? Or some of you might go, he sounds normal to me. And to you, I say, don't jump to conclusions. So back when I was 15, I started to lose vision. And when I was 15, I lost the bottom half of my right eye completely. And I want you to take a second. I want you to visualize the bottom half of your left eye graying out one day and then blacking out the next. It's kind of scary. But one thing that I was forced to do in that moment was to focus not on loss, but on what I still have.
Hmm.
Because guys, when you focus on your loss, you focus on the negatives. But when you focus on what you still have and what you still have to work with, you can still push forward past that loss. So I lost the bottom half of my right, and as of right now, I'm in the passenger seat of a car that my mom is driving, and we were just at my ophthalmologist office, and he looked at my optic nerve and he said, "Yep, optic neuritis," and I'll get to what that means later. And he said, "Optic neuritis, you need to go to the ER," and I went, "Okay." And we're in the car, and my dad um, just rushes from the house and sees me, and he looks at me with these eyes of concern and like shock and like emergency state, and he goes, Alec, don't freak out. It's gonna be okay. Don't freak out." And this is actually a joke that my dad and I have back and forth. Is whenever like something major comes up, I go, "Don't freak out," because for one, that's a good way to think. Is don't freak out. It's just take it one step at a time. That's a way of living. But the way that I cope with loss is through humor, because I think honestly it's the best medication. And that might just be me, but I think it's the best form of medication. But another thing is I looked him in the eyes and I said, "I think you're the one freaking out. I'm fine." Because at that time I had to not I wanted to have it, or like I was like focusing on like figuring out what I had to have this mindset of, okay, I lost the bottom half of one eye, which means I have the other half of that eye and an entire other eye to work with. When you lose something, shift your focus from here's what I lost to here's what I still have. Now let's figure out how to compensate.
Whew,
And
that's good.
if you can do that, guys, honestly, you will make it through any situation, no matter how dark it seems, no matter how unfortunate the circumstances, and you will be able to stay positive, motivated, and you'll be able to inspire others to do the same. And that's what it means to be a leader.
Awesome.
Um,
Definitely. Let me jump in really quickly. Thanks for opening with that. I think that is solid place to start. A solid kind of grasp of as best as we can for myself and our listeners to really try to understand your world as best as we can in this moment. There's no way we're going to fully do it, but the best that we can in this moment. And I think that really gives us a really great focus on what we're kind of, our conversation today.
yeah,
Can I ask you some questions with what you kind of shared? Because every
absolutely.
I started taking notes. I love to take notes when we do these because there's so many things that's dropped that I want to capture in the moment. So if you're listening to, I encourage you definitely take notes. We always say note takers are difference makers. So definitely go out there and take some notes, write some things down, listen to this on a replay. There's going to be a lot of gems dropped. I know it. I already know it in this episode. So one thing that came to mind, if I can, and kind of get a little bit more conversation on Alec is you said focus on what you still have. Now that I love it because it gives you good focus on things that you have in the moment. If I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, when you found out that
Mhm.
information, what were those things that came to mind that you still have? Because I want to kind of really address, like, if there's somebody that's going through a similar situation in a season of loss, and then there's so much things leaving, sometimes it's really hard to focus on what you still have. So if it's something, if you're okay with sharing something that you've seen that you still have, someone might be able to relate to that.
So I'm writing a book right now. I'm actually well, the plan right now is to be co-authoring with my buddy Matthew. So Matthew, who's born blind in one eye.
Yeah.
He and I are planning on co-authoring this book, and I started free writing yesterday, and my one of my first thoughts is at least I can still hear.
Wow.
Now let me tell you why. I'm a big music fan. I'm a big music fan. I love sound. I play guitar. I love the sound of acoustics. I love the sound of singers. I appreciate and respect the heck out of musicians just because of the sheer talents, the raw dedication, and just the amazing sound that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And if I lost hearing,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, that might be a struggle for me. And that's a weakness. I
Mm-hmm.
will admit that right now, because that's a mindset shift I need to make myself. Because honestly, at that point, I need to focus on what I still have. Sure, I lost hearing, but maybe it's the fact that I can still feel the beat of the drum.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right,
and
right.
there's always a positive in any situation, and you need to find it.
Yeah, and it seems like a sense in the word is coming to mind like a relentless or an unwavering pursuit that you just know that there's something you can still count on, even if you don't see it in the moment, even though the thing that you lost is so uh, gigantic or so prominent in a moment. What happens is that there's almost a relentless pursuit in yourself or maybe in your mindset that it's like, I know there's something that I still have.
I think it's kind of cool. For me, it's almost like a game. It's how long is it going to take for me to find a positive?
Wow, that's cool. That's
Because
cool.
for me, it's like
Yeah.
I want to be second nature,
Right.
and that's going to take years for me to develop that ability. Because obviously, it's human nature to look at things negatively,
Right. Right. Right.
but I wanted to make it human nature to look at things positively. And obviously, that's a mindset shift that's going to take life and experiences and mess ups and successes and this and that for me to go, this is how that works.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
And I'm only 23, so it's like I have some time to learn it, but it's also like I have a desire to learn it quickly, mainly because I'm only 23, and I've already had a lot of loss and had a lot of experience in life, and obviously you're going to hear some of that experience today.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that I want to have that mind shift, because when life happens, I want to just be able to look at that positive,
Right. Right.
which
Right.
means why make it a game is because I want that ending time. I'm
Yeah.
not even kidding, Jordan. I When I get into a situation where it's negative, I'll start a timer,
Yeah.
and I'll stop it once I think of a positive.
I love it, man. I love it. That
That's
that
how dedicated I am to figuring out how long is it going to take me. Because every single time something happens again, I start the timer and I want to beat my previous record.
I love it. Right. I'm going to start. I can just picture myself, or even if there's any listeners right now that's like looking for a timer and kind of doing this, when it's almost as a game. And in a sense, what that does, the powerful thing in that, we all know this, there's a principle or a quote, with leadership that's like, you ask better questions, you get better answers, so that's a better
Mm.
question to ask in the moment. It's not, if we ask the question, why is this happening to me? We're going to get a bunch of answers that validate that. But you're asking a question, what can I focus on that I still have? And there's only positive that comes from that question. So that already, that powerful question gives us you a great pivot to focus on strength. But at the same time, you're actually applying that to a fun game. And we know that we look forward to things that are fun. So in a sense, we're looking more, as you say that, I know I can say honestly, and I'm sure there's people that's listening that can relate, where it's like you almost look forward to a situation that you once wanted to resist, and it's like when you're looking forward to it, it's like, hey, boom, hey, I lost something. Let's go ahead, get that timer out. Let's go, boom. And you're seeing how quick you can just ask that question, find what you still have, and then build from there, right?
Well, so to quote the Apostle Paul, he tells us that he says in Romans 5, verse 3, he tells us, let us rejoice in our sufferings. Now, a lot of
Yes.
people look at Paul and think he's this total psychopath,
Mm, mm, mm.
delusional. Why would I rejoice in sufferings?
Right.
And that's something I've learned to do because I've made it a game. Because it's like, oh, good, I get to beat the previous record. I've been dying to do this.
Right. 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 Right.
So it's true. You can find joy in suffering. And I'm not even talking from a biblical sense right now. You can find joy in suffering, but you have to choose to find it and to look
Right.
for it.
Right. And when you bring that up, I think the shift that happened for me is that, because that's powerful. I was just reading through that, is that when you see that suffering isn't the end, when you know that there's more story after the suffering. But when we see that suffering is the end, if sometimes we think that, then it's easier to feel like, and that not good feeling with it, or that sense of failure, or that sense of like it's the end. But when you realize it's not the end, there's more, right?
Yeah.
There's a more after that. There's a building point from there. Then I know for me, it's like, oh, I can kind of see, even though it's still in a moment like really hard, because I definitely don't want to downplay or downsize what it feels like to lose your sight when you went through that. I didn't experience that, and I don't want to pretend that I know what it feels like. And if anybody's listening, if you're going through a hard time, I don't want to inject that I know what you're going through, because we all have stuff, and life is tough. It's going to hit you. But what you're sharing is so powerful, because like how you said in that passage, when Paul was mentioning, suffering isn't the end. Like there's more after that, right? So let's talk about that if we can. I think this is a perfect time, if you're okay with it. Some other questions. Okay, I think that'll come up later. But some other questions that came to mind is, in your roles of leadership, and maybe talk to that if you can, so anybody listening can identify any specific roles that you do, because you work in some form of ministry too, right?
I do. So I founded a ministry back in 2018 called Hope for Today's Tomorrow. Now it's number 4 because this ministry is a 4-year program. There's 4 years worth of lessons, Bible studies, and just applications, because it's intended for high school and college, which is 4 years each.
Okay.
And college is 4 years, and college is usually 4 years minimum. Obviously 2 years if you want to get an associate's, and 3 if you want to
Right,
get,
right.
but 4 years is usually what people shoot for. And my podcast, which you can find on Spotify, is called H4TT, the podcast, or Hope for Today's Tomorrow. So the ministry there is all about. So the intro to the ministry, the intro to the podcast is "Welcome back to H4TT, the podcast, where it is our goal, honor, and joy to share and spread the hope of Jesus Christ to you guys, tomorrow's church today, to benefit you in your walk as a leader and as a disciple, both inside and outside the church." And really the goal is to help you look at today's problems from a tomorrow's perspective.
Love it.
It's
Yeah.
to look at today's problems in today's situation from an eternal perspective, because nothing that happens today is going to stop eternity.
Right, right, right.
And once you start to look at your problems from an eternal perspective, you realize this ain't nothing. You start to realize this is so temporary. There's no reason to dwell on it.
Right.
And going back to the whole vision thing, and this is one of the reasons why I was able to start this ministry, because I had that perspective. And because when you start to look at life from so temporary, you start to really realize that loss is nothing. Because even if I lose all of my vision, I'm going to spend eternity with perfect vision.
Wow.
So what's the loss of having 20 to 80 years, or whatever it might be, of like no vision, when I have eternity, which you can't count,
right?
Because there's no end.
Right.
And I'll have vision that's been better than any vision I've ever had. So when you really start to look at your situation, let's look at the story of Job. He lost everything, man. He lost his family, his property, his own flesh. And in the end, because he was faithful and he had this unwavering willingness to praise God, God blessed him with twice as much as he had before.
Right. Woo.
And if we can have that unwavering ability to just wake up and praise God, no matter what our situation is, he will reward us. Maybe not even with twice as much, maybe 3, 4, in infinite times as much as we had in the end. And that's what our goal is to look at today's problems from that eternal perspective. That's what H4TT is.
As you share that, because you're spot on. I mean, anytime the story of Job comes up, I think it immediately just kind of corrects my perspective, because I just no way I can imagine any half of what Job actually went through. You almost hear the story and you're just like, whoa, like it's a great reminder, even for those that are familiar with it. When you see every trial one after another that he kept facing and overcoming, it really, it gives good perspective, because I personally haven't experienced those. But at the same time, as I'm hearing your story, and I hear how other people have overcome stuff that does the same thing, so it's almost, in a sense, it's like I'm learning how other people have overcome situations that's similar to mine, or maybe even greater than mine, and therefore it kind of lowers the suffering that I might be going through. I can still feel it. It's still not fun. It's still, it's like how you said, I love how we started today by the season of loss, whatever we're looking at. But it almost gets me more excited for tomorrow, just like how you said the title of your podcast, because you know that today isn't final. Today isn't final. Like how you said, your perspective is eternity. That's such a powerful perspective to have, and, I think I know our listeners here with leaderseeds, they know the faith foundation that we have, and then we have people that don't have that, and that's perfectly fine. But I think it's still a great story as we're kind of going ahead and you're just kind of unpacking it, whether it's any season of overcome that people going through, we can draw from that and we can grow from that, because our perspective kind of, in a sense, opens up because we're seeing through someone else's eyes. You know what comes to mind when I think about you, brother? It's like, as I know right now, it's like, it almost seems like when you first share your story of losing sight, your physical sight, it almost seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's like what I would say about you when I talk about people would say, like, you're somebody I know that when you started to lose your physical sight, your vision of life became more clear. And
So
that's
here's what I don't
go
mean to
ahead.
interrupt. I don't
No,
mean to
go.
interrupt you, but I'm gonna just like change your wording around just a little bit because you've almost nailed how I look at it.
Okay.
So again, warning, because my entire life is full of vision puns. My entire life. I'm not even kidding here.
Wow, that's cool.
As I started to lose vision,
Yes.
God used me to help other people see him in their lives. Did you catch that? As I lost physical sight, I helped other people see God clear. Maybe not even by talking to them directly, but they observed the way that I viewed life, or the way that I saw life. I was looking at life. Man, the puns keep coming, right?
Right.
The fact that God used vision loss to help others see. And to me, as long as
Wow.
I can notice that in my own life, I don't care if I go blind, because now I know how to deal with it and what perspective to have.
Whew. That is powerful, just hearing it. I can't even imagine how you operate from it every day. I can, in a sense, because I'm seeing what you're working on, but just hearing you say that, there's so much power in that. I want to ask you one more time. Say that again for those that heard it and wrote down half of it, but they want to write it down really good. I want to give another chance for those listening to get a chance to really write that down. Say that one more time if you can.
As I started to lose physical vision, I helped other people gain spiritual sight.
Mm.
So the book that I'm writing right now is called Seeing Through Blind Eyes.
Wow.
And the whole thing is to give you a perspective of loss and then help you gain the perspective of gain.
Mm.
The whole, like, yeah, I lost vision, but guess what I gained from it?
Right.
Because it's okay to see loss and to understand it and to recognize it, but don't focus on it.
Right.
Because once you start to focus on it, that's all you see.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Acknowledge it, but but you're not my focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that book's all about. And I'm excited to really get into writing it, because there's so much I want to say, and there's so much to say. And honestly, this perspective can change you.
It definitely can.
I'm not saying my perspective can change you, but this specific perspective that anyone can have, by the way. So hopefully throughout this episode, I can help you to kind of see that perspective a little bit more. Man, these vision puns are everywhere. And on top of that, how maybe I can help you to just to gain that perspective to go, huh, maybe my situation isn't that bad.
Well, I agree 100%. I think where we're already at in the conversation has already blessed some people listening, and I know it'll continue to. So I want to encourage you that, yes, what you're already sharing is already blessing myself, and I know there's blessing other people that's listening. So I agree, as we continue the conversation, there'll be more opportunities for that as people start to see how to see through blind eyes. And when you mention the book and everything else, if those of you that are listening, we're going to give all the many ways to connect with Alec after this, social media, website, and all the different stuff. That way you can stay connected to, and even mention his podcast. So that way, listening to the end, and you'll see all those different ways to connect with Alec. After this. When you're sharing that with the eyes, I want to kind of take a shift if you can, and maybe I have two questions. I feel like there's two parts that's really coming out really powerful.
Sure.
And one of the first one is, I guess, in a sense, like maybe because I've never lost sight myself, and I don't know if anybody else has, but for those that may be wondering, like we're here on a podcast and we're talking to each other, so, like maybe talk to you like your day-to-day life and how you've learned to adjust with just day-to-day tasks, because how that affects you. And maybe we'll start with that, and then I'll just kind of pre-frame where maybe my question is after about your leadership roles, and how that site has either blessed it or actually even made it challenging in your specific roles. For those that are listening that are going through a season of loss, maybe not with sight, but in a leadership situation that it's like they might be losing something that's adjusting. So first and foremost is, how did the adjustments happen in your day-to-day life, and how did you win at that?
So I'm going to answer your question with kind of a perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to go, and then I'm going to get into your question and answer it from a specific point of view that you want me to answer it from, because I have so much to talk about.
Okay.
So for one, while I'm talking, I want you, the listener, to ask yourself, what is leadership? How do you personally define it? Because leadership is nothing if not perspective. Now, I want you to hang on to that question. Getting into Jordan's question of how I adjust, let me start off by saying what I can't wait to get back when I get vision back. And this might blow your mind a little bit, but what I miss the most about vision is being able to walk down the street without having to stare at the ground.
Wow.
Because for me, just so you know, where I'm at right now, I'm fully blind in my right eye. I have no vision in the bottom half of my left, and I have no peripheral in my left eye as well. And also, I just want to, just saying that right now, I want to thank God right now that if you have full vision, that God has blessed you with that. Honestly, that's that. If you want to talk about a blessing, the fact that you can wake up and you can see perfectly, or you can see fully, that's a blessing. And don't ever take that for granted. Now, for me, one thing that I've had to learn how to do is to move my head and shift it around. Now, people think I might be paranoid or psychotic. I don't care. This is how I have to adjust. And I have to look around a lot, because I have to look at the ground and make sure I know that it's clear to walk in these certain areas. I have to, and I don't have depth perception, so I hate stairs and elevation changes because I can't fully see the elevation change. And I had to take my time walking down and upstairs to make sure I'm adjusting my feet properly, or that I'm lifting my foot up when I step up the right amount. I always have to use railings. Always. Unless I'm super used to the height of the steps, I have to use that railing. I'm to the point where I can see out of the top half of my left eye, central vision wise, well enough. And right now, the vision I can see, or that I still have in the top half of my central, is 40/20. So that's pretty good, and and right there, that's a gain, because there could be a lot worse. Um, And quite honestly, it's the fact that yes, you learn that um it's kind of scary to lose, but
Mm.
it's also a blessing to gain. I read an article recently about a seventh grader's perspective of blindness.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I was trying to just gain some perspective for the book, and I came across this and I was like, oh, I gotta read this. And one thing that he talked about is the fact that a lot of people with sight are terrified of losing sight.
Hmm.
Now I'm going to say that again. A lot of people with sight are
Hmm.
terrified of losing sight. I had sight fully. I played baseball for around 10 years. I played volleyball for around 4 years. I did track. I ran track for 2 years, and I started running track in sophomore year, which is after I started losing vision. Um, and into the year where I was diagnosed, and I'll get into that later. And it's not that scary.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, let me just reassure you of that, because once you start to really get paranoid of loss, it means any form of loss at that point is scary. But
Wow.
remember this.
Okay.
It is the fact that when you lose, and is when you lose, you also gain. Now, let me also preface this. When I
Yep.
was when I was 17, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which is why I was losing vision.
Okay.
And here's an insider tip. Less than 5% of MS patients are diagnosed under the age of 18.
Wait.
So less than 5% of all MS patients are diagnosed under the age of 18. I was 17 when I was diagnosed.
Right. Right.
I'm in that under 5% range.
Yeah.
You know
Is
what
it?
though?
Yeah.
That's not scary. That's cool.
There's that shift, man. There's that powerful shift again. I love it. I
Yeah, there
love it.
you go.
You say you just declared that's not scary. That's cool. You know what could be scary is not cool. So let me understand that statistic because that's powerful. So less than 5% is diagnosed under the age of 18, right?
Less than 5% of everyone who's ever been diagnosed with MS throughout the
Right.
world is under the age of 18
Is under the age of
when they
18.
get the diagnosis.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So,
Now, one of the reasons I brought this up, and I don't mean to interrupt Jordan, but I do want to get to this point, is the fact that let's look at what MS is.
mhm.
Yes, it means multiple sclerosis, but no. And stick with me here because I do have a point. What is MS? It's an acronym.
Mhm.
It's 2 letters. Yes, they've found MS, multiple sclerosis, whatever, but let's find out what else it means. And I wrote a poem at 19 called Dear MS, and this is when I figured this out. MS, you may have taken my sight, MS, my sight, MS, but you'll never take my spirit, MS. And yes, maybe you came with with many symptoms, MS, many symptoms, but you also gave me much strength, MS. Do you see where I'm going with this, guys?
Yeah.
Redefine your situation.
Yeah.
There are two ways to look at it. Let your situation define you, or take a moment and define your situation.
Man, I got to interrupt you, man. That is powerful. That shift is powerful, and I know for sure anyone listening to that will just push the pause button to rewind and to capture that again. And somehow we got to get that printed and kind of put it up because that is powerful. That is so powerful. We hear concepts. I love it because you hear concepts about change your mindset. You hear concepts and theory about change, but that is something super practical by redefining what 2 letters can actually shatter people's lives with, 2 letters. And for your situation, like you kind of took that could have been that could have just taken you out, but you used a gift
Yeah.
because you have a gift of poetry. You have a gift of way you see things, right? When you write poems and you use that to redefine MS. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to say that again. I'm so sorry, but that was too powerful to drop it once. I'm going to ask you to drop that again for those people that are listening. How did you shift, and maybe recite that poem of MS if you could?
So I'm just gonna recite the poem to you at
Yeah.
this point because that's just about half the poem. There's more to it.
Okay. Okay.
Dear MS, I want you to know, yes, you took my sight, but you'll never take my spirit. I want you to know, yes, you gave me many symptoms, but because of that, I've also gained much strength. I've also become mentally strong. But I also want you to know, MS, I have the ability, right, and the duty to nail you, multiple sclerosis, my sin, my sorrow, my shame, my suffering, all on the cross with you, my savior. So, yes, come at me, MS, because you will do nothing to break me down, but instead you will build up my story. So, come at me. I dare you. Until next time, MS, yours truly, Alec.
Come on, come on. That there's power in that. There's power in hearing those words. I can imagine the power in speaking those words. So thank you for blessing this episode with that. And anybody listening on here, thank you, man, for sharing that. Thank you
Dude,
for writing
do you
that
know
and for
where
sharing that.
do you know where I wrote that?
Why? Tell me why.
At a restaurant on a napkin. It just
I
came to
love
me
it.
and I
I
just
love
wrote it
it.
down.
I absolutely love it. I love it. There's so much lessons to unpack in each moment, but to capture that right now, we'll come back to that at a certain time because there's power in that readiness that you have. I mean, just in that really quickly, let me just expound on that. The power that I'm talking about is that sometimes wait for the situation to be so perfect, but you said that came to you, that will bless this episode, that will bless many, moving forward. That came to you on a napkin in a restaurant on a spur of the moment, but you was ready to receive it. So there's a readiness in your spirit that was ready to receive it. And as you look for what you still have, you find that's all you really ever needed. Right.
Yeah.
We're not focused on what we're losing, but so there's so much to unpack in that. So thanks for kind of sharing that. I took a note. We're definitely going to talk more about that, in the future and stuff. But can I ask you some questions about also, because I want to connect. I want to connect where it's like your story is powerful, and I can probably talk on multiple episodes on the things you've overcome in your story with vision and sight. There's so much to learn. I want to connect with leaderseeds. We connect the fruit and the seed, and I want to kind of like look at it and say, okay, somebody that's going through a situation. I love the perspective with the mindset and the shift, right? And how does that affect your life? You mentioned with that, walking and kind of looking at the ground. So you can't wait to actually look up and not, if you ever had sight again, to not have to stare at the ground. Now, what has that done even for you with working with your lead? Because you lead a thriving ministry, and in a sense, I know sometimes when we go through personal loss and stuff, that can also say, how am I going to affect how I serve or how I operate in this world? But you lead a thriving ministry and you've actually grown in many ways in that. So maybe talk in that, well, how you're pouring into others also, please.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Man, dude, you're a really good interviewer. I gotta be honest, you asked some great questions here.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you, man.
Seriously, if you guys haven't subscribed to Jordan's podcast yet, what are you doing? Subscribe. This guy's powerful.
Thanks, man.
Um, and on top of that, make sure to share this because this is stuff that I guarantee you a lot of people will get at least something out of his episodes here. And he's got a lot. What are you on your 100th season? I saw.
No, we just
You
we just
saw that,
kept
right?
going. Right. We just keep going. I
Okay,
look at it as conversations, man. I just love
I
conversations
gotcha.
about it.
I gotcha. So I was like, oh my gosh. So, uh, yeah, that's a great question, man. So I first of all, I'm gonna go back to my question that I had you think about.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is one of the reasons why I put that out there is because I can just pull that back and say, so what did you think?
Yeah.
To me, leadership is an option. Did you hear what I said? Leadership is an
Option.
option.
Right.
Here's why. Because if you're leading because you have the title of leadership, please stop.
Oh, say that again. Say that again.
If you're leading just because that's your title, please stop.
Please stop. Thank you.
Because unless you have a heart for those you're leading for, don't lead. Remember, leadership has to do with leading people, not sheep, people. Which means, guess what? These people have a background, they have a story, they have a childhood, they have parents, they have a culture, they have beliefs, they have a presence, a past, a future. They have goals, aspirations, dreams, and you as a leader need to care about that. So when I see people that I'm leading, I go and I see that they don't have vision issues, I go, oh, I'm so glad that they have sight. Yes, that no, I'm not saying that they should pity me or anything because I'm gonna be honest, as somebody with a disability, don't pity people with disabilities. And I guarantee you they hate it. You know why? Because at some point when you pity someone, and this and I'm not gonna stay on this, but I do want to let you know, this is an insider's tip, is your pity words become empty. And guess what? It actually puts us in a form of depression because it means, man, they really don't care.
Wow.
If anything, try to understand what we're going through
Mhm.
or just understand what we're going through. Those are two things. Those are only two things we ask. That's it. I'm serious.
Wow.
So, insider's tip, if you see someone with a disability, I don't care what it is. Anyway, getting back to this, is the fact that now that I see the struggle, that what it means to not have vision and to not be able to see the bottom half, I appreciate those little things.
Mhm.
And that means I also appreciate the little things about other people.
Mhm.
I appreciate someone's laugh.
Mhm.
Have you guys ever thought about that? I want you guys to think of somebody who, when they laugh, it just makes you laugh. Because you just you either hear the joy behind it or you just hear, man, that's such a great laugh. I want you to think about someone when you look into their eyes sparkle, and it just reminds you that life isn't that bad.
Mhm.
Do you see how little you can get when it comes to appreciation? But it's these little things that make a difference. And as a leader, I appreciate those little things about those that I lead. I at one point I was mentoring like 30 kids a day.
Wow.
And
Wow.
this was back at the beginning when people started coming to me and were like, "Hey, I like what you have to say. Can I get your advice?" And
Mhm.
it was that was a chaotic time. Um, and I still talk to them. I guess just not that regularly, I would say,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is okay, you know.
Yep. Yep.
And that was just a season, and at that point in time, I wanted to actually get to know these people because I wanted to get to know those little things, so that way every single day when I saw them message me, I'd smile because I remembered those little things. Leading shouldn't make you miserable; it should make you smile.
Wow. Wow.
You ever stop to think about that?
It's good.
Because I mean, like, because in any point in time, yes, no matter where you are, leadership can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
But this stress shouldn't make you depressed or miserable. It should make you smile. So
Right.
you go, you know what? Yes, that was stressful, but man, did that feel good. And that should be your attitude on leadership. And once you truly actually can say that, like legitimately, you know you're in a good place in leadership.
Right.
Because I think you can, even if you just pause the episode right here, you could think back and go, I had someone in my life that led, and he just didn't, he or her or whoever it was just didn't seem like they wanted to be there.
Right. Right. And you know it. There's a sense. There's something you pick up on, right?
Yeah, and obviously not bashing that person at all.
No, not at
I
all.
mean, it's just saying that that's an example of someone who maybe they just weren't meant to lead, and they were just in a season of their life where they were trying it, but that feeling is a way that you realize maybe I'm not meant to lead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you shouldn't force yourself to be something that maybe you're not meant to be.
Right. Right.
And that's not saying that you should like degrade your dreams. I'm
No.
just saying maybe make that small shift.
Right. Right. Right.
If
And
shoot for the stars and land on the moon, if anything.
I agree, and I would even say I think in the training that we have and in episodes we do some courses and stuff and workshops, and it always I think what kind of comes off natural to me is some people when they challenge it. I feel like it's the beautiful thing with leadership is that we feel like a lot of times I know for myself when I first started thinking of leadership, I thought I'll be a leader when there's people following me, so I want to get ready for there's a leader and there's a team and all that, but the thing is when you get a chance to look at it, like the toughest one to lead is ourself. So self leadership, everyone has a chance to be a better self leader. So that might not be a role at work. That might not be a role in your profession that you're a certain title. That's why I love what you say where it has nothing to do with title, because everyone has the title of self, and we have to lead ourselves better every single day. So it's like I always ask people is like, how much do we do what we say we want to do? That's like the foundation of leadership. Like, do I show up on time when I say I want to be on time? Do I follow through with this small goal of my fitness when I say I want to? Do I apologize when I feel like I should apologize? It's these little questions to kind of ask ourselves and do a little self check to kind of say, because that self leadership, in a sense, it all starts from that. I think I'd say personally, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, but I feel like how you mentioned people that might be struggling in that season. And I think what it is, it's a season of self-leadership. I know when I'm in those seasons when I just can't pour out to people, I really got to take some self-care. I got to step back. I got to slow down and rest. And I got to lead myself in a sense to set a strong foundation. And that's in a sense, what I would call leader seed. Because a lot of times as leaders, it's really that perspective shift of leadership sometimes isn't about getting fruit, but it's about seeking the seeds and seeking the seeds in our life first. Right. So when we're seeking the seeds in our life and how we plant seeds, we can't give what we don't have. Right. We can't sow. A lot of times we think of sowing seeds in other people's life. And it's like, what is the seeds that someone else sowed in my life? And how do I nurture those seeds in my self leadership, in my self care, in my, how do I up level myself? How do I grow myself? How do I, all those self components, not in a selfish way, but in a way that like I can only give my best when I take honored time to rest, and of course, it's like when I'm receiving with the faith base that we have, when I'm receiving from the one that gives the greatest, which is with God, he's a CEO. He's the ultimate leader in our life, but the responsibility of how do we lead ourselves? Because that's the toughest one. I know for me, I've been in this for, many years. I think I started coaching and consulting for the past, I think it was 20 years ago. But the thing is that I've learned over the time, the toughest one to lead is ourselves. And that never goes away. When you kind of up level, guess what? There's new challenges, but that consistency to say, how do I reevaluate myself? How do I be honest with myself? And then it comes natural when you're talking to other people, because I think that's what people pick up on when they see like, this person can't really lead themselves in this season. So I'm going to be hesitant to follow them because they're not really leading themselves. And it's okay. But we all got to check a little bit, lead ourselves better. And to me, to answer your question, the people that I look at with leadership, they have a very strong sense of self-leadership. Like they're not unwavering. They're not all over the place. There's a consistency in their life. There's things they stand for, whether I agree or not. But there's a consistency that I see that they have some good self-leadership in their life, a strong foundation that I want to kind of participate in. What's your thoughts on that?
There's so many things I just want to dig into, man, that you just said.
Did I open up 5 more episodes right there?
My guy, you had so many like bombs you just dropped, and you just were like, yeah, we're gonna move past it though. So one thing is that you and I talked about earlier
right.
is what does it mean to be a hypocritical leader?
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember.
Which means if you're not self-leading, but you're leading somebody else, that's hypocritical leadership.
Right.
Because you say you're a leader, but you're not being a leader in all areas.
Yeah.
And that's what, and I would say that that's what it means really to be a leader, is about the whole like self leadership first and then leading others after. Yeah, I mean, leadership definitely starts out with baby steps, I would say.
Hmm.
Because if you just jump in, yeah, it's a little overwhelming.
Hmm. Hmm.
And maybe that's when that whole feeling of being miserable comes into play, is when it's so overwhelming that you just don't know what to do.
And that's what I think I
Um,
love about working with youth and or anyone in a sense. But I think the powerful thing is that I know for myself, I made the mistake that I didn't think anything of leadership until I got into an assignment for a leader, and that's too late because then when you're in when I'm in the assignment or the role, I already got to pour out to other people, and I haven't done the inner work of myself first. So when I get a chance to work with people, we all start with the inner work, the inner work of the leader, because that way when the assignment or the role comes, that part is set. I kind of picture like a house, right? The foundation is set and is solid.
mhm.
And then that way the whole example of when the winds come and the waves come, the foundation is solid. So what are we standing on? What is the values that we truly believe in? What is that person's personal values, and how do we build from there?
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta set the foundation first. One thing I would also suggest, and this is something that I personally have to work on, is if you're leading, have somebody leading you.
Hmm. Hmm.
You can't be the high up. You got to have someone who's been doing it for a while, who's helping you, or at least someone who's coming alongside you, because um, it's really hard to be your own foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. Um, Another thing is the fact that you talked a little bit about pouring into people
Hmm.
as a leader, and um, I saw this great analogy of a cup that would had a little bit of water in it, and a cup that was full. And the cup that was full represented you, and the cup that you were leading represented the person who was had a little bit of water.
Hmm.
What a lot of people do, and you pour your entire cup into there, is they fill up the entire person completely, but it leaves you empty.
Hmm.
And I said, but what you can do, and you switch them around. And he said, what you can do is if you pour in a little bit at a time, but in every time you step away from the situation, you fill yourself back up. In the end, your both will be filled.
I see it. Right. Right.
Like if you guys can picture it, if you don't, go check it out. I'm gonna try and find a link and send it to Jordan so
Okay.
that he can put in the description, because it's a great visual and you'll never forget it either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so there's that. Um, I'm trying. I do. There were so many things that came to mind when you were talking. I was like, he's bringing so many bombs. He's dropping so many golden nuggets of just wisdom. Um, but yeah, dude, leadership is definitely something that it's not a hobby; it's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. Right. Right.
Absolutely. It's the same thing with podcasting, by the way. I never thought it was going to be a lifestyle. I just thought it was like a on the side kind of thing. And then I was like, oh shoot, there's a lot more to it.
Right. Right. As you get in it, right, you kind of see there's
Yeah.
more, and oh wait, I have to learn how to do that too. I didn't think I had to learn how to do that, and you're
Yes.
you're
It's
doing things that you never thought before.
exactly.
Okay.
Um,
Cool. Let me go ahead. I'm gonna drop in. I'm gonna do a quick mind kind of what I call is kind of when our mind does a quick commercial break and a quick kind of mental, it breathes a little bit. So let's let our minds breathe a little bit, because when the conversations are so rich like this, sometimes it can kind of quickly feel like our cup is getting really full. And if there's listeners that are kind of relating, you might feel like in a sense where we're learning about Alec, we're learning about his powerful perspective in life and his foundation and some bombs that he's dropping. And sometimes it can feel like if you've ever been at a convention all day long, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, they're so good, but I don't know what to do with it. So let's do a quick mental reset. We're going to ask some really fun questions to Alec. I didn't prepare him for anything for this. So it's on the spot. It's real stuff, but it's fun questions that don't have like a heavy emphasis on it. And it's questions like, man, what's your favorite breakfast item, bro? When you wake up in the morning, what do you look forward to eating?
you know, the busier I get with this podcasting, with the ministry, and with the book.
Yeah.
And by the way, I took a break from Clubhouse for like a week because I was starting to live on there.
And me too. Me too.
So I had to take a break. I had to take a step back. But I'm starting to ease my way back into it. Man, I figured out I'm kind of not eating breakfast as much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I and when I do, it's usually a big breakfast. I don't know if you guys probably do, but Gordon Ramsay,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
he has these great videos on very easy breakfast items that he loves, and one of them is a layer of hash browns on the bottom,
Yeah.
and a layer of eggs on top,
Okay.
like over easy eggs,
Okay.
sprinkled with seasoning and cayenne pepper or whatever you want it to be. And it is delicious.
Mm.
I had a buddy of mine. His name is Akash. He goes to the Bible school that I was going to for a while. I'm going to be going back. I'm just taking a semester off right now. But he came made breakfast with me, and at one point he took over. That's just who Akash is, which is cool. But he likes cooking, and I'm
Right.
like, all right, dude. So he put cinnamon on it, and I was like, interesting twist. But he put a little bit too much cinnamon on.
Right.
So it was like,
It
oh,
do-
it was like cinnamon with like some hash browns. You know what I mean?
yeah. It was dessert. It was dessert in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, man. I love a little um B&E, a little breakfast, a little bacon and eggs.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing. Dude, you can't go wrong with it. Bacon and eggs, man.
Right.
Oh,
Right. Right.
good stuff. A little bit of sausage in there, maybe maybe a Mexican omelet, which has just all the good spice that you need and all the good vegetables and that
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
meat and a little spice to start your day. I love um corned beef hash. That's what
Oh,
it
yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I love corned beef hash.
So a good hearty
Um,
breakfast in the morning. Like you said, you're not doing it every morning, but when you do, a good hearty
a good
breakfast.
hearty
Yeah.
breakfast because
Yeah.
usually what I'll do is I'll have like a good big breakfast. Like I want to eat lunch, but then I'll have a nice dinner.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, man.
Um, One of the suggestions that I would make if you do want to go hearty breakfast style is oats. Because what
Mm.
oats will do is they release energy in your body slowly, which keeps you going throughout the day.
Oh, right, right, right.
Oats is a great way to start your morning.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I'm definitely a fan. We do like a whole blueberry stuff and stuff in the morning with that.
Yeah.
I got a question, man. You mentioned that you love music, and this would be a really cool one to kind of hear and a fun one to talk to. So when you're on, like, say you're having a bad day, you got a bad day, it's just things not working out. We all have them, and it's like, man, like, what is a song that comes to mind that when you play it, it's just going to change your state? You're like, let me play this, and what's your hype music, man? What's your hype music?
So I'm gonna come at this from a perspective that no one's gonna predict.
I love it. Let's go for it.
As a poet
Mm-hmm.
and as a spoken word artist and a performer, I love people who can speak and sing in a way where just by listening to their voice, I can guess why they wrote it.
Oh,
You
oh.
hear the emotion behind it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm a metalhead.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up that way. My dad's a metalhead. I grew up with LP, Linkin Park,
Right, right.
Green Day. I grew up with all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when you listen to some of their songs, you can say, I can just hear the brokenness. I can
Yeah.
just hear the raw emotion behind it.
Mm.
So one thing that I love to listen to is LP's album, The Hunting Party Part 2, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of the more hardcore stuff, but it's also a little bit more raw and honest.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And what I love about it is the fact that it puts me back in my emotions and I almost express it through what they're singing.
Right. I told you, by hearing it, you connect to it, and it allows you to process it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Music says everything that I could never say.
Mm.
Um, I think a friend and I, and I'm sure this is already a saying, but we used to say, music is the sound of my emotions.
Sound of my emotions, huh? And that's probably why there's so much of a hook on it, or people relate to it, because when we identify that emotion to what we're trying to express, right? We're trying to express it. We're trying, that I'm thinking about those times. It's like, I don't know, people are trying to check in on you and how you doing. I don't know, like, but something isn't right. And then there's a song that we identify to, or music, and we're just like, they get me. I don't know why, but they get me, and you identify with it, and there's an immediate kind of connection that happens there. So, I think that's a fun question to ask. And I think that helps me kind of, I personally think I love that question because it helps me to kind of know, to connect with people, to really connect with people. I think music is powerful. So thanks for being so open and kind of talking through these random questions. Like I say, it's a good way to kind of get our mind to kind of take a breath when we're talking about some really powerful mind perspectives and leadership.
Yeah,
But to say, hey man, let's know this guy. He's a real deal. He's a real guy, and he has favorite breakfast and he has some cool music that he likes too.
no,
It's a great
totally,
connector.
totally. I like it. I like the spontaneousness of it, and kind of the randomness of it too, is because it's like just some random questions, has nothing to do with the topic, but I love it. I'm an on the top thinker kind of a thing, so
Right, right.
I love it. The improvisation of it, I love it.
Man, if there was one thing that today's list that our audience today, or maybe in the future, because that's the cool thing with podcasting. And I'll do a quick plug for podcasting. I absolutely love Clubhouse. I do, but I think there's a discipline in a leader's life that we got to have, where there's a good time to have a ton of variety. And that's when I love to be on platforms like Clubhouse. I think it's such a great networking tool. But at the same time, I think there's a good time to have a good focus. And for me, I still listen to a bunch of podcasts because that gives me great focus, and when I have 10,000 options, it's hard to focus. So you mentioned taking a break from stuff like that. I think that's wisdom, bro. I think it's time to say, hey, I want to have 100 options today and listen to a bunch of conversations. And then I want to listen to specific conversations. And I think that's still the special part of podcasting. It gives us good perspective to focus on things. So thinking about today and thinking about how I kind of open that up, when we're thinking about today's episode, people might listen to it today, they might listen to it later. This is a kind of a first introduction. A lot of people, that they might be getting of you, and then people that I know there's a bunch of people that know you already and are supporting you along the way. So today, what would be one thing that, if there's one thing you really wish could be communicated today? And I know it's hard because there's so much we can talk to. There's so much you've overcome, and my guess is this probably won't be the last time we're talking, bro. We'll definitely have more, but today specifically, what's one thing? What's one thing you'd tell somebody that you wish maybe you heard?
You are not alone. One reason to say this is because a lot of people think nobody knows what I'm going through. I'm the only person right now. I'm all alone. Nobody cares about me. Nobody loves me. I don't know any of your listeners. I don't know anyone who listens to it personally. And I don't know it, as the listener, I don't know you. More likely than not, I have no idea who you are, what your situation is. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how it started or where it is now. But let me say this right now and be upfront and clear about it. I care about you, and I understand what it's like to go through hard times. So if nobody else has told you that today, I want you to know that I do care. And I want you to know that I am open to hearing what's going on and giving my advice and just giving you an ear if you just need it. And I also want you to know something. You're not the only one going through a hard time right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic, guys, globally. Sure, there's a few places that are starting to settle down, but for the most part, it's still pretty bad. You are not the only person going through hard times. And let me tell you something, if you just reach out and try to find people that can understand, you'd be surprised what the result is. So go ahead, Think about one person right now, maybe two, heck, maybe five that might be able to relate to you. Shoot them a text, see what happens. And if they don't have the response that you wanted, message me. I'm always willing to give an ear to those who understand. Always. And even those who can't. I want to know what's going on in your life. I'm a person who, when I say I care, I am not messing around. I'm not lying. I ain't playing. I care. And I'm going to tell you right now that I care. And I'm serious. So let me tell you right now, if you haven't heard it today, there is somebody who cares. And there is somebody who can relate. Don't listen to the lie that your brain will tell you that nobody cares and nobody knows, because you just heard it in person from me.
That was so well said. Thank you for. I love that when I asked if there's one thing that will come to mind, that's what came to mind, because I personally think that, especially in two forms that people are experiencing right now, one being the situation that our world is going through, and number two, in any form of leadership. Leadership can feel at times, especially even in self-leadership, that it's lonely. There's a lot of
Yeah.
internal work going on. There can definitely be that sense of nobody understands and it's lonely. But at the same time, you got to fight to be a bridge builder, not a bridge burner, to continue to build the bridges and to reach out. Just like Alec just kind of challenged us and kind of encourage us to all do, is to reach out to him, reach out to somebody, stay connected. That's the beautiful thing in today's world right now, is that there's so many different forms to get connected to people. We just got to keep reaching out and pursuing that connection, because every great leader needs those connections and those solid connections. And maybe at another episode, we'll talk about that, because that's a powerful thing, is communication and connections of leadership. And look for that. Probably, I definitely say, I know it's coming up in future episodes that we have, because it's so important in leadership. As we kind of, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope you did too, Alec. I know that we're just kind of breaking the ice with a lot of these topics, and I know there's so much more that we can get from that. So I want to, at the end of the episode, like I promised, we're going to give a lot of ways that you guys can connect with Alec, and actually stay connected with him if you want to reach out personally. But at the same time, let's continue these conversations as we keep having conversations in Clubhouse, even more podcast episodes and everything else. From myself personally, I like to challenge myself to do whatever I do every single day to raise the bar for myself. So that way I can expect more for myself than anyone expects. So I expected to grow in today's leadership. And I hope that you got a chance to experience a great interview and a great podcast here at Leaderseeds. We really appreciate you being part of the podcast and a great conversation of leadership. So yeah, I just want to check in and see how was that time here spent here with Leaderseeds.
Man, I've been looking forward to this since I got this offer to come on here. And I've listened to most of your episodes. And let me tell you something, I just love what you're doing here, man. It's such a great philosophy. It's such a great end goal to, like, and it's such a great metaphor, seeds, planting something that grows into something more throughout as you grow as a leader. And on top of that, bearing fruits as a leader. I like that too. Um, it's such a great, man. It's such a great philosophy, especially because, like, I run a club on Clubhouse called Seeing Through Blind Eyes, and mine's a total metaphor, but it's also a real life lesson, kind of like what yours is. The whole plant a seed, like something small that turns into something bigger.
Right.
And I love it. It's great, dude. Leader Seeds is really going somewhere, and it's making changes. So I cannot wait to see where it goes in the future.
Right on, man. Appreciate you spending the time here with us, and those kind words you said, and the wisdom that you dropped from taking the time, guys. Here's the exciting thing is we got a chance to hear somebody that took a time in his life that could have shattered him. And if it shattered you, I want you to encourage that it's not the end. Sometimes we hear this and we're like, man, I got you something really tough. I went through a bad situation, and I wish I seen it like how Alec did. But the thing is, if you're listening to this today, it's still not too late. We can still, every single day, we can take things that we've learned, even if in the moment maybe in the past we didn't see things in a certain way. We can do it today, and if it's difficult for whatever the challenges or any hurdles you're looking at, reach out to somebody, reach out to here at Leaderseeds, to reach out to Alec. And our hearts are kind of united in a purpose of really having good conversation with people so we can keep overcoming, keep growing, keep moving forward. So that being said, as we kind of close up for today, Alec, any last words before we kind of wrap up our conversation today?
Yes, I'm glad you gave me an opportunity. Guys, Jordan just talked about how we're all shattered, right? We're all broken. But let me also tell you this: it's through the cracks of brokenness that light seeps in, and it's also through the cracks of brokenness that light seeps out. And on top of that, if you think about a mural broken and shattered, right? But if you look at each individual piece has its own beauty to it. And remember this, it's kind of like you. Your brokenness is not something that's gross and cruel and evil this and is whatever, but it's like also, you know, each individual broken piece of you has its own beauty to it.
Right.
And my challenge to you is to find that beauty and to set that beauty free.